Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio live. This is live. So you guys,
and we're missing somebody. Where are you,
guys
Paris?
are seeing this. You're noticing that the third head, third talking head, is not on screen. He's having some technical issues. He'll be joining us shortly.
Okay.
But for now, you get yours truly and the man, the myth, the legend, the prepared guy, Shane. The don't show my face on social media guy.
Preferably.
We are. I'm excited to be here. This is one of my favorite things to do every week, is to get on and not just talk preparedness, but get on with all of you and converse. So welcome to the live stream. Those of you who are just hopping in here, make sure you like and share this so we can get more people on. We just saw our viewership just doubled by saying that. So we've got Runner Man finally made it for live. Welcome. Utah Mike, as always. The guy's awesome, always there. We should see a few more of you hopping in here pretty quick, but want to thank you guys and remind you of some upcoming events. Shootah is happening May 20th. The month of May just kicked off. It is the 3rd. So on the 20th, Shootah is going down, and it's down in, I believe, Hobble Creek. Is that right? Down near
Hobble Creek shooting range there.
Yep.
Mouth of Hobble Creek Canyon.
There you go. And it is going to be awesome down in Springville, Utah. Technically, gates open at 10 a.m. and it goes until 5 p.m. There's going to be tons of vendors there. You can check out a lot of different cool products. And if you use the code PrepperTalk, you can get a discount buying your advanced tickets. So get your advanced tickets now, and you can go to Shootah. UtahShooters.com is one way to get to it. But go to Shootah events, and you can buy those tickets, get some discounts. The other thing I want to tell you about is the Be Prepared Expo. It's coming back to Utah. This will be their second one. Be Prepared Expo 2022 is happening June 2nd and 3rd at the Legacy Event Center, which is in Farmington, Utah. Go to their website, bepreparedexpo.com. Get your discount tickets. They're going to be more expensive at the door. They've got some huge sponsors giving away some more huge, cool things. Oh, and they've already got a video of us on their homepage. So head on over to bepreparedexpo.com after the live and watch that video and buy your tickets. But prepping. Everyone needs to prep. We are the gateway fun for everyone. All things preparedness. Start listening to us. You'll get hooked on preparedness. You can get your friends. This is the intervention you need to get started in prepping.
Is there anything else? I mean, really? Is there anything other than prepping? I mean,
if you're not high on prepping, you're low on life.
That's true. That's true.
Man, I'm buzzed then. I'm constantly buzzed, if that's the case.
Hey man, prepping is the way.
Hey man, can I get another hit off of that freeze-dried food over there?
Oh yeah,
that'd be great.
Oh dude,
I should break out some more of my freeze-dried ice cream.
All right, yeah, okay, I get it.
All right, fine. But dude, prepping is it's fun. It's calming, and it provides peace if you're doing it. If you're not doing it, you're probably paranoid and freaking out a little bit.
I was completely serious about that. Is there anything else? For me, I've just integrated it into my life. It is my life. I mean, yes, I do fun thing. I mean, prepping is fun, but other than that, I'm not going to the beach. I'm not going to the water park or any of that kind of stuff. I just don't enjoy that stuff anymore.
Well, what's funny is what are your nostalgia memories from your childhood compared to what are the nostalgia memories the kids are having today? Like nowadays, it's like, man, I remember when I beat the third level of this game on this day.
Donkey Kong.
Yeah, right. Whereas for me, it's
Brothers.
like my nostalgia memories. I remember building my first attempted trap to catch squirrels.
Deer hunting with my dad and my uncles.
Right? Skills. Things that will serve you well throughout life. Like I remember canning with my grandma. I remember baking cookies for the first time with my grandma. I thought that was awesome. Right? Learning skills. And now the nostalgia moments are I don't even know what. Thankfully, I'm not a
Yeah,
kid,
that's true.
right?
I guess I should make a point of talking about to my kids. I know there are some things that my kids have mentioned that call their core memories. They're not nostalgia moments, right? They're called core memories.
Okay.
And some of my kids have said, "Dad, do you remember this? Do you remember that?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, vaguely." And say vaguely, it's one of my core memories. How can you not? So I
That's
think it'd be
awesome.
good to sit down and say, okay, what are your core memories? What can, and that would help me to build on those core memories. And most of those are in our family oriented with our family outdoor outings, with those types of things where we're outdoors. We're not going to a park or something like that. It's about, even being here at home. It's not about travel for me. That's my experience. There you go. Catching first trout. Yeah. It's awesome.
Like I remember fishing as a kid with my dad, like at 5 and 6 years old, going and learning and being so excited about this huge trout that I caught that was maybe this big.
And then getting that hook in your thumb, right? And then your dad having to push it through and clip it off. And
I didn't have that happen, but I did have a lot of other issues. But those are like key memories, key moments of learning and growth. And all the different things that we experience in life, they affect us, right? They impact us and they create perspectives and they create biases.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you like that segue? We're jumping
good segue there, Scott. I was good segue.
Some really interesting biases, and are they helping you in prep or are they hindering you in prep? Right, and
not just prep, but in life. We see
life is, well,
everything in the news. Prep, exactly, just what I was saying.
Prep is life. There's nothing else. What else is there?
Lifestyle, exactly. What else is there anything else?
Well, it's like, okay, I'm a married man, and courting never stops. I got her to marry me a long time ago, and now I've got to keep her married to me. And so that courting should never stop as a guy, right? Same thing with prep. It should never stop. It is a system of life that creates more comfort, more peace, and more freedom for me. So that's why I continue, and I choose to continue to keep doing it. Just like, I want a happy wife, happy life. I'm going to prep.
And for me, that's what real life is. That's what life is, what it should be, what it was to my ancestors, as I see it.
Well, there's this kick of like, oh, we need more sustainable living. We need to be more like, it's funny because I hear some kids will be like, oh, well, we need to make sure we're buying foods from this country because it's more sustainable and they're better at it. And I'm like, you can grow that in your backyard. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, you can grow that in your backyard. Like there's things you can do that are even more sustainable than helping so-and-so out. You can bring things right into your own backyard or your own greenhouse or your own front room. Like I've got a friend who's growing an avocado tree in his house right now.
Inside.
Oh, it's doing fantastically.
I have a friend that's growing an orange tree next to her couch inside the living room.
Yeah.
It's in a little bucket. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. She sent me a picture and I was like, good for you. Do it.
And that's the key. It's like, just find what gets you excited about life and do more of it.
So I guess jumping into this topic, this book is kind of what got me going on this topic. This is really made for teenagers. So I've got my teenage son who's doing homeschool, learning this book and doing book reports or chapter reports on it. And
wait. Tell us what book it is first.
Sorry. Yeah, I just held it up to the camera, assuming everybody could see it. It's called Beware Your Bias.
But what's the banner above?
It says The Tuttle Twins Guide to Beware Your Bias. So Tuttle Twins is Connor Boyack, Libertas Institute here in Utah. They are fantastic. Highly recommend all their books, all the materials. I've got a whole bunch for our homeschooling and such. And as my son was doing these little reports for me, I'm like, I was aware of most of these different biases. I didn't know that most of them had a name, right? They actually have a name, they have a definition. And I thought that it would be really important to be consciously competent with knowing and acknowledging, recognizing these things, and then learning how to change and how to address them right now with all the propaganda we're seeing, all the misinformation we're being fed. I think for me, these have really opened my eyes. So I wanted to share some of these things with you guys, and to again be conscious of them and really notice how they're affecting our lives.
Let me just read something that really comes to mind right now. This is a quote that's, I don't remember who it's attributed to, unfortunately, right away, but it says, thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, habits become character, and your character becomes your destiny. And this relates to these biases, because as we learn things, as we will begin to create thoughts, as we're pondering and considering, then those thoughts, we start talking to them, we start to become articulate, we start to be able to, and the best way to think, and this is, we haven't referenced Jordan Peterson in a while.
I was about to say this.
So let's reference Jordan Peterson really quickly here. One of the best ways for people to think is to articulate it in words and to have conversations. That's why freedom of speech is so important, is because it gives us a chance to meet with people who have opposing views and articulate together back and forth our arguments and come to an agreement that maybe individually we would have never come to. And so those words become our actions. So then we'll act out those things in our life. And as we act out those things, it becomes what the scriptures say. I mean, I just read this in John. I think it's John chapter 7. If any man wants to know if my doctrine is true, he should do the things that I've I'm paraphrasing here. He needs to do the things that I've told him to do. So doing is what gives us that evidence. It's kind of the scientific method, if you will. Like, if you want to know if something's true, do it. And if it works and bears good fruit, then you know it's doable. And you become, as you do things, as you think, as you articulate through words, and as you act, you're going to start to form habits, which are biases, which in a way, because and then those biases can form who eventually we become. So to me, it's really important to recognize that if you want to have a future that's wonderful and amazing, you've got to be aware. And it's hard sometimes because there's so much to be aware of, but you've got to be consciously aware, like Shane said, consciously competent. You got to be aware of all these things, how your thoughts, words, actions, deeds all develop into who you eventually become. And biases is a huge part of it, because it's what we learned. It's what we've been ingrained with. It's how we were raised. It's all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well,
it's funny because we go back to the whole 2020 saga, right? That unfolded, and that became they created a new normal, right? We've heard that phrase pounded into us, right? Which jumps off to the first bias, normalcy bias or normality bias, which is the basically lowering in your mind the tendency to underestimate the reality of or likelihood or impact of something happening.
Or not seeing a danger
happen. That it wouldn't fit into society today. That'll never happen to me, right? A lot of people won't buy life insurance because they're like, well, I'm not going to die early, and then they die early, and so then they go to a GoFundMe for so and so, right?
Or a car wash.
It's easier to like add a little, like, what is that phrase? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. Yeah. With the normalcy bias, it's that we've never experienced it, so it'll never happen, right? We've never seen it happen in our lives, never experienced it. So just continuing the new normal. That's another thing we hear an awful lot, right?
We've always had food on the shelves when I go into the store. Exactly. Why do I need to prepare? Why do I need to have a home storage? That's ridiculous.
Never gonna.
You're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And just recognizing that this is part of psychology. I mean, these are all psychological topics. You know, the extremes that we're beginning to see, you know, I think we're seeing a lot of extremes, honestly, in our news media and in all the events. And these are mostly driven by emotion, right? And so if personally speaking about myself, I don't like to generalize. If I can identify these, then I can control my emotion better, right? Instead of running to the bank, right? Which we've seen a lot. That's been a big topic, right?
Leaning that's kind of towards a stoicism, right? Kind of like a non-agitated response. Meaning you're not going to panic. You're not going to run out and do something. you're
clear
gonna
head. Yeah.
be
Yeah,
calm.
you're responding versus reacting. Somebody shared that with me years ago, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important. I think this is important too, to understand these biases, because as you meet with people who you need to help create this community with, and you might run into somebody who's got a really bad set of biases from their habits, from their upbringing, and you can help. And once you recognize it, you can help walk them through them so that they can come into the, wow, get out of that paradigm, change their paradigm, a little paradigm shift, and say, wow, I need to really, that's how we help people wake up, is we help them by recognizing these biases in others. We'll be able to share with them how we can help them to come to where we are in terms of preparedness and being ready for what's coming.
Yep. And I think, a lot of these topics covered in this book really, truly apply very well to what you explained there. One of the first ones here is confirmation bias. I've got a bunch of them that I was really, really happy to talk about here. Confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is when something goes against a belief, your beliefs that you deny. It's contrary to your belief. Your belief may be wrong. So it's kind of, this is like the big one. This is the one that I think is the most prominent, is this confirmation bias. There's a whole bunch of others that apply to the propaganda. And I think those who formulate and put together this propaganda, they are very well aware of all of these biases, and they use those against us. So if we can realize what they're trying to accomplish in the news, I mean, I just stay away from the news in general, mainstream. But when we see it, if we can recognize it, oh, that's this bias, that's this type of biases, and we can counteract it. So this confirmation bias is I think most prevalent in mainstream, but and it's kind of represents a whole world belief rather than our own, right? So, and of course, it affects our individual relationships as well. This confirmation bias, but you're gonna say something?
I was just going to say that it basic confirmation bias is we're seeking for confirmation on a belief that we already have,
right?
Rather than trying to, which may or may not be correct, but we're trying to find evidence for our belief, to fight for our belief, rather than being open-minded enough to say, wait a minute, what can I learn from someone else? I love that. It just brings me back to another quote by Socrates that says, I know that I don't know, or something along those lines. And I think that's the perfect thing to kind of combat the confirmation bias, is like, look, I'm not only, and we do need to, I mean, it's a form of defense and a form of protection, honestly, because there's so much out there. There's so many things that they can come at us. So we need to have some things that, like, look, I'm going to find some evidence about what I believe to prove what I believe is true, but also be aware, like, wait a minute, am I really interpreting this evidence correctly? And do I need to maybe take another, look at from a different perspective? And that's a way to kind of get out of the confirmation bias, is to realize that, hey, we might be wrong, and we ought to take a look at what somebody else may. And here we go, Jordan Peterson, right? You ready? So Jordan Peterson says that if you treat somebody as if you have something to learn from them, you're going to have a much better time in that relationship than if you treat them as if you're going to teach them everything. And so if every time I meet somebody, I have a little bit of this confirmation bias, and I want to tell everybody what I think. But when I'm aware of it, when I stop myself, I think, you know what can I learn from you? What do you have to teach me? And it's amazing how much different the relationship, and especially the conversation, but then even the relationship works when you do that.
An example, Utah Mike threw this up. He's like opposition in all things. He put a correction on his next post, but there's a bias in that, right? That there's opposition in all things. Well, in all things, there has to be an equal and opposite reaction to every action, right? But there doesn't have to be. It's not going to be a huge reaction every time if it's a small action.
If it's truth.
And that's the key. There is not opposition in all things. Lies don't oppose other lies, but they do oppose truth. So there's a truth to that, but it also goes back to another type of bias, which is an anchoring bias, which is a lot of times we'll adopt the first thing we hear and agree with that, and that'll be our anchor. And so then nothing else can sway us from that, because we've been stuck on it. And I was that way when I first started prepping. Oh my gosh, I was I like when I started doing it for myself, I was like, nope, this is the way it has to be done, and everything else is wrong. And then I started going to more events, and I was like, wait, what? I'm like, wait, there's a different way to do this.
And
I'm like,
and
oh,
it
there's an
works.
easier way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a less expensive way to do this. And I'm like, it took me a while. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound like that's the right way that I was taught. And a lot of the stuff I was taught was good, but it wasn't the only way. And we need to be open to those other ways.
Yeah, I think that's also could fit under the kind of the curse of knowledge bias, right? You think you have, you have maybe more knowledge. I'm not saying this right. So you either don't have enough knowledge to make a proper decision, or you have way too much knowledge on a subject. It works both ways. That can affect your bias towards something, right? And I guess that also goes back to confirmation bias as well. So,
for example, I believe that all doctors are indoctrinated.
I believe that as well.
That is a bias.
Yeah.
And my wife hates that bias that I have. But in most cases, I don't say all cases, in most cases, that bias is confirmed. There's some where I'm like super surprised, and I'm grateful to find those doctors that aren't indoctrinated to the degree that they choose what the association says over what truth is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
But is that also, could that also be the backfire effect?
Explain.
To where you basically, when you have a belief and you believe that all doctors are compromised, and I think that for the most part, yes, that's true. But you believe it so strongly that that belief becomes more embedded. It's a stubbornness, right? That when someone challenges that, you're like, nope, and you push back, and it becomes a stronger belief, right? The backfire effect affects that belief and just makes that belief stronger.
You dig your heels in rather than opening up to learning more and being humble.
So if I have to have my foot amputated, and it's in the best sense to get my foot amputated,
Scott, you need to get your foot amputated. No, I'm not doing it.
Don't do it. That's the backfire effect.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. Yep.
That, as an example, that's a terrible example, but it's true. Like, I don't want to lose my foot. I'm going to take care of myself so that I don't have to.
That's kind of pride. I mean, you can put pride in.
Pride into that for the fall, and you can't walk well without a foot.
No,
you'll fall over a lot.
One of the funny things I think about when it comes to doctors is that you'll ask them, they have a practice. I'm like, what is that? That means they don't know. It means they're just practicing on you. Like, I'm not going to have him just experiment on me. I'm not going to be some guinea pig somewhere. And you know what I found, and this is really one of my wife's gifts, and I really appreciate it because it's really come in handy, is that she can feel what's going on with her body in different areas. She can feel like if she eats something, like at the end, like if she has nausea or something, she'll know exactly what she ate that caused it, like exactly what she ate, because her body kind of tells her that's what I ate. And there's other things that she'll be like, okay, I think I need to take this medicine or that medicine to be able to take away the symptom that I'm having right now. And she'll know. And I'm like, wow, that's such a gift. And that's being in tune. I believe that we can, I mean, obviously we're all given gifts, but there's other gifts that we can use. So, I mean, I don't know where that came from in terms of this topic, but anyways, that was something that I think is fun. If we take time to really think about, I think that's something how we can combat the normals, the biases that we just mentioned, is that if you realize, hey, wait a minute, you have the ability to learn and grow and develop and can expand your knowledge, maybe that will trigger in you some gifts that are lying dormant, and your stubbornness is not allowing those to come through and be born. If you'll open up your heart and mind to certain things, I think that you'll find that there's way more that you can learn from others, and you can be humble and really progress.
Yeah, I think that one ties in. I'll segue that into another one that I learned about. Is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's either over or underestimating your own perception, your own skills, your own abilities. So I'm trying, and basically that would tie into, say, your preparing, for example. Like, oh, I know how to make a fire, right? And then you go out, you find yourself in a wet environment with minimal tools and no lighter, and you've overestimated your abilities or underestimating your ability in that you are too scared to go out into the wilderness and start a fire. Right. And so just again, acknowledging that could be a bias that you have. And it I think is powerful.
Here's an example of that. We've talked about this experience a number of times, but I'm going to back up a little older for. So remember the time we did the Ready Man Challenge, Shane?
Mm-hmm.
And I navigated.
Mm-hmm.
I did pretty good, right?
Yeah, you did awesome.
Okay, there was a time I was terrible at navigating. Like, I'm okay now. I'm pretty good. There was a time I got lost. I was on a scout camp. Like, it was supposed to be a 15-mile, 13-mile hike. It ended up being a 50-miler that week because this jackwagon decided, with his other counterparts of stupidity and crime, to go ahead. And
you overestimated your ability?
We overestimated our ability to stay on the right trail.
Mm-hmm.
And we got on the wrong trail. And then we thought we could get back on the right trail.
And you were ahead of everybody else, right?
Wrong trail. And 4 or 5 wrong trails later, we were so lost that we were losing hope as well.
That's a good example.
Oh, dang.
And so that has been a fuel for me to make sure I know how to do things. That one specifically, the healing process was more learning how to read terrains, learning how to read topographical maps.
I must admit, Scott, I was underestimating your ability in that situation, but you came through. You came through.
That's fair, though. That's fair because you'd never been in a situation where I had to navigate somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually did argue a little bit over which way to go.
This is my job. You gave this to me. I'm doing it. You better trust me. So,
and you guys did. And it would be a completely different story if I'm like, and we all died and I killed everybody, right?
We actually won that challenge, actually.
And so I'm grateful because I had mentors like my dad to help teach me. After I'd failed miserably, he made it an impact in my life to do more events where I would navigate things. And he's like, I want you to get good at this.
Yeah.
I think it was more out of embarrassment for him. He's like, I can't have my son be doing this. Right. That he was like, I'm going to teach you. But he's good at it. He's really good at it. And there's certain skills that you're way better at than me, and Paris that you're way better at than me. And it's like, we have to learn to be able to work with other people and have those arguments. And then at the end of the day, be able to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to trust you to do this right. And not let our bias ruin that friendship, not let our bias ruin that experience or the rest of our lives.
Yeah, great point. So another one that I think is a really hot topic now, big topic nowadays is groupthink.
Oh yeah.
And there was an experiment called the Ash experiment, and it was a social experiment where one individual, if I can remember this properly, was amongst a dozen others, and they were being shown a chart with different lengths of lines on it. And for the first couple of rounds, they would each say, okay, is this line longer or shorter than this one? And I may be messing this up. And they would all say it properly. Oh, this is longer than this one. This is A is longer. A. They would all choose one, and eventually got to where 4 or 5 choices down the line, where they all started to choose the wrong choice. Oh, B is the longer line when A was. And it got to this individual who was the only one who wasn't in on this experiment, and he chose the same every time as the group. So that is, I think, that's more than just groupthink, in my opinion. It's we are all kind of conform. I mean, look at what happened in the past couple of years, Scott. You referred to it. That became so much groupthink. It was crazy. Social pressures to conform with what the current belief was. But now we see it in the rearview mirror, and we have 20/20 vision, right? And we can see exactly what that was. And that also applies to some of these other biases as well.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Do you guys know who Jocko Willink is?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah, I've seen him.
I believe former Navy SEAL, if I remember right. But he actually gave an amazing example of this type of thing. Because one of the things of groupthink is where everyone just relies on the leader to make the decision,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Relies on, and he's like, the right way to do it. You think that's the right way to do everything, right? The leader says, here's the solution, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's what we're gonna do. And he goes, no, this is what we did. And the leader would say, here's the problem, here's the scenario, how would you do it? And then the team leader would take his group and say, okay, we'll go figure it out. And then he says, okay, guys, here's the situation, here's what we need to accomplish, how do we do it? And they together create the best possible solution and outcome, because they can utilize all the experience of everyone and get everybody's perspectives. They wrap it into a final solution and then bring it back to the leader and say, here's what we're going to do. And he says, okay, but did you think about this? And they're like, oh, and so they'll tweak it if needed, and then they'll execute on it. And the execution is far superior than it would have been had it just been the leader saying, here's what you need to do. And it could have been completely wrong if it was just the leader. These guys, trusted each other enough to look at all their experiences. And that's where we as a society, who's testing everyone else's experiences? When you're subscribing to the mainstream media all the time, you're not hearing anyone else going through what you're going through. You're only hearing what they're telling you to do. And so that groupthink is just being pounded in on you.
And people just go based on what, quote unquote, the experts are saying, rather than trying to realizing that, you have the ability. Like, I did a post the other day on my financial Instagram, and I had so many people like, well, who are you to say this? Like, what are your credentials? Do you have a PhD in economics? We're not going to listen to you. I'm like, first of all, I have common sense. Second of all, how do you think anybody made it to PhD status? They did research. Well, with the internet, we have access to almost all, well, depending on the browser you're using, I suppose, but we have access to just as much opportunity for research as any. Like, there's so much material out there. There's so much really good stuff. If we take the time, we can actually have some really intellectual discussions. And a lot of people just don't take the time. They just well, that expert over there he's got a PhD. I'll just listen to whatever he says. Well, good luck with that. You're going to be in some big trouble pretty soon if that's how you're going to live your life. I think that we all that's not self-reliance. That's dependency of some sort. And so I don't know what that falls under in terms of biases, but I know that I think it's appeal to, there's one of the fallacies. I think logical fallacies is definitely a bias. And I think the appeal to authority is something that's a part of that as well, that people just appeal to authority. If you're not an expert, I don't have to listen to you. Well, good luck with that.
Mike just said, if two people agree all the time, one is not using their own brain. That right there, right?
Yes. Amen to that.
That's why I love how, like, there's things that you'll say that I'll disagree with, and the things that I'll say that you'll disagree with. Like, we'll all disagree with each other at times, and it's great, because then it causes me to reflect and rethink how I'm doing things. And then we'll go to like last year, we went to the Be Prepared Expo and met some wonderful people, and there's a few things that I'm like, I think I need to change my mind on that. I need to do some more research on it. One of the big things was Goldbacks, right? And we were like, what is this? Oh, that'll never catch on. Oh, that's stupid. And now
look what I end up having.
Now that we understand it more, it makes more sense.
Yep.
Right. But it's also how things are framed. And that's one of the problems is there's like this framing bias that if you frame it a certain way, it changes how you receive it.
Again, media involvement. The way they frame, the framing effect, the way they frame something to display it a certain way. And again, that screams propaganda to me.
It goes back to the best example is, have you guys read the Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain? In that book, he's whitewashing a fence. And his friends start making fun of him. He goes, oh, you only wish you could do this. This is the most fun I've ever had. And he flips it to where they end up paying him for the opportunity, nay, the privilege
to whitewash the fence,
that he was tasked to do as a punishment. If I remember right, I don't know if it was a punishment or not. I think it was.
I think it probably was. Yeah, I think you're right.
Knowing awesome. Tom, it was likely a punishment. but that's happening, and we've got that on how many streams of infiltration in our lives between our handheld devices, our computers, laptops, tablets, our TVs. We're constantly being propagandized,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
With this framing effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that hit me pretty hard, I took it personally, is called the declinism. It's called declinism or declinism. It's kind of a pessimistic worldview
Yep.
that everything is in decline, that everything is getting worse, right? That it's not getting better, will inevitably continue to get worse. And I'm definitely guilty of that. But
Mhm.
and that's my bias. It really is. And so I knew I do need to recognize that I need to work harder at looking at more of the positives and not falling into that trap all the time.
Can you give me an
Because-
example of both? I guess I'm not really following you. Like,
Well,
give me an
he
example of
looks
what's
around.
declining, and an example of what you thought was declining, but it's not. Maybe.
And it's been compounded by the confirmation bias
Yes.
because of everything that's happening in the world.
Because it's true. It's really happening, right? It's not a
Right.
bias. It's actually what's happening. But it forces me to look a little inward and say, okay, am I just constantly looking at everything with a negativity bias? That's another one, right? Is
Mhm.
in the media, that's another thing they play on all the time. Is negative news gets more clicks. It gets more information, right? You want to see the train wreck. The puppies, yeah, they're nice to see. They're fun to see too. But man, the train wreck, it gets a lot of the car crash gets a lot of views.
Mhm.
Well, there's also the optimistic bias, right? That everything's going to get better. Or
Yeah, yeah. I know people
it's
like
not as
that.
bad as
Too.
you think it is.
Yeah, I know
And
people
it's
like
like,
that. Too. Really?
yeah,
Really?
yeah, you
And
lost
then
your
my
leg, bud.
declinism
Not that
bias
good.
kicks in.
Yeah, there's so many things that, like, yeah, all of our growth, our upbringing, the things that we've experienced, they will affect our biases.
We all have biases. Yeah, no doubt.
And it's trying to put those in check to have the conversations to actually learn things. That's the hard part.
Yeah, especially when we're
absolutely.
coming together as a community, understanding that these biases exist, recognizing in ourselves what biases we have, and then how they work with other people. I mean, there might be people that you just click with immediately, and you would recognize that if you would have a conversation about some of this stuff, you'd probably have a lot of the same biases. And then there's people that you meet that you make, it's like water and oil, like you just
Mhm.
don't get along, and it's probably because you're having some opposite biases on things. Like you might have the optimism bias and they have the negativity bias, and now you're like, I can't even hang out with that guy, he's just too negative, and that other guy's like, that can't hang out with that guy because he's too positive. And so
Mhm.
Brainwashed.
yeah, he's not a realist,
Yeah.
And so there's some real, to be well-rounded, to be a person that's well-rounded and have that balance. I think that's a self-reliant individual who can really be influencing the greatest amount of people. And that's what we want to do, is we want to be able to influence people for their good. There's a difference between influencing people and manipulating people.
Yeah.
And the difference is the intent. Like if I
Mhm.
intend to get something out of you or to do you harm or to get above you, that's manipulation. If I intend to have an edifying experience with you, like where we're both edified, where you're edified and I lift you up, and in the turn I get lifted up and we get edified together, that's an influencing, persuading, and the techniques and the skill sets to be able to do both are the same. It's just the intention with which you use those skill sets. And I think understanding some psychology and understanding some human behavior, why people do things, can help you influence and persuade them more effectively towards coordinating as a community in your neighborhoods. It can help you coordinate, understanding how to maybe expand your worldview to include different perspectives, and just make you more well-rounded. And I think there's a lot of importance to mindset. I said this before, mindset change. If you want to be ready-minded, you need to have your mindset in the proper place, and mindset changes everything. And you got it. So mental skills are just as important as physical skills. And these are some of the mental and psychological skills we're trying to share with you here tonight.
Yeah, and that mindset is influenced by your beliefs, right?
Yep.
So there is the belief bias that again, it's part of our upbringing, it's part of who we are, how we were raised. But one thing that I try and remember is you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mhm.
And so I mean, again, it's difficult, especially you're growing up with certain beliefs and they're ingrained into you your entire life, and you got to put them to the test to see if they're really true or not. But it is a bias as long as we acknowledge it and move forward from there.
So I always believed that God would never let me go down the wrong path.
Okay.
If I asked him a question and I said, "Is this the right way to go?" he would always tell me the right way to go. That was a bias.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in life, I would ask God, "Is this the right path to go?" And he'd say, "Yes." You both remember some conversations you've had with me where I've gone down those paths, and then I get frustrated because that wasn't the right path. And then Paris, in his jackwagon wisdom, says, sometimes God will send you down a path so that you know that wasn't the right path, so that you wouldn't doubt it when you go down the right path.
Mm.
You wouldn't second guess. And I'm like, wow. And that's not something you came up with on your own.
The Holy Spirit put that in my heart to put it to you, because I wouldn't come up with that.
And that has changed my perspective on decisions, on walking paths, and on how people are going through lives who have differing viewpoints from me, right? Who have different biases. I am so much more open to them and understanding of them and having dialogues with them because of that learning experience. I
That's
was more
powerful.
closed-minded and close-hearted before that. And I'm grateful to that experience and the wisdom that came from the Holy Spirit that changed my heart and mind and how to appreciate and approach things. And so it's like, just because your bias has led you down a certain way your whole life doesn't mean that it's either right or wrong when something else happens to either confirm or reject that bias. It just means be prepared for change.
Yeah.
And being ready-minded helps you to deal with that change and embrace that change in a way that can be constructive as opposed to being destructive and ruining an outlook or ruining the rest of your life, right? As a teenager, how many times were you with your parents? You're ruining my life.
Exactly.
They've got a simple rule, right? And you guys both have teenagers that have probably yelled at you, right? I don't yet.
And not just teenagers, but 20-somethings.
Once they start, they never stop. Oh, sorry. But yeah, I mean, we our biases frame every aspect of our life. You know, the cultures that we grow up in, the communities that we are involved in, the sports that we play, right? Every cohesive team or dysfunctional family that we're a part of has an effect. But my hope and our goal with this podcast is to help you to see other ways of doing things and understand more and not take everything for granted, right? To be grateful, but to be proactive in your preparedness. Be proactive in your life. I think if there's anything you can get away from today is what I think, Shane, you said it. You don't know what you don't know. Or Paris, I think you said that. You know, I don't know what I don't know.
I quoted Socrates, but Shane said that later.
See, you both said it.
Yes.
I have no biases about it. You're both great men. I appreciate everything you guys have taught me and helped me open my eyes and understanding too throughout my life and throughout our friendships. And for those of you who are listening, many of you that I've talked to individually that you have impacted my life and my decision-making processes. And every experience we have with anybody will either construct or destruct a bias. And that's okay. Understanding that is where you win.
Yep.
And using those biases to create a better life and to help others create a better life and to come together is what will ultimately lead to a better society, a better people.
Yeah. One last thought I just had is that bias isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
right? Don't use bias as a negative word. It's not a negative thing. It is something meant to bring truth to light.
Mm-hmm.
To bring that truth to light. So
Yeah.
like
And I like what you said earlier, Scott, about that change is something that's so important. I mean, if we stay static, we're not going to grow, and we need to grow. And change, awareness brings change. And hopefully, we've shared enough here to become aware of some things. And we love hearing from you because that makes us aware of things. And that awareness can affects how we move forward in our life. And if we learn something new that we can add to our life and edify, that's what we love. That's what we want to do. And that's create the community for that. Change, awareness brings change, and change brings progress. And far as I'm concerned, and change is the only constant. So that's
true.
funny enough. I don't know if that's a bias too, but that's kind of a funny quote that I've heard long ago.
I think it's been scientifically proven. Change is the only
Yeah.
constant.
Uh-huh.
The science is
Well,
settled on that one.
Yeah, science is settled. You can no longer question it. For those of you guys who are just joining us, this is Prepper Talk Radio. This is our weekly live event. If you're listening in hindsight, we appreciate both audiences, everyone who's involved, wherever you are. Please get more engaged with us. Let us know what your concerns are, what your questions are, where you want future conversations to go, so we can bring that content to you weekly. That's our whole purpose with this podcast, is to bring the content to you weekly to help you be a better prepared person, a more ready-minded individual. And our goal is to create better individuals, households, and communities, a stronger nation of people who think free, who are self-determined to do good things, whether that's grow a garden, be a homesteader, whether that's invent a new tool that's going to save the world. Whatever it may be, we want you to be on your A game all the time and keep growing and keep doing. That's preparedness isn't just about the apocalypse. It's about the everyday,
Yep.
being a better person. And when you're responsible, you can be a much better person. I know I am a much better person when I'm being responsible and when I'm being true. When I haven't been those things, I've been a much less of a person. So get out there, get ready, stay ready, be ready-minded, and tune in next week. Thanks for joining us tonight.
See
We'll
y'all.
talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.